All right, Jan, before training at Edge, what was your practice routine like and what challenges were you facing?
So the few years when I was in Maryland before joining Edge as a coach, I was a college coach and didn't really have a whole lot of time to practice my game or compete with my own game, so I'm kind of skipping those years. But before that in college, I probably used to practice 25 to 30 hours a week outside, just on the range and putting green, and then I'll probably play 36 to 54 holes just through team practices and scrimmages on the course and things like that. So definitely way more time spent on the golf course and practicing than the time that I have for the game right now.
So this season you qualified for the US Mid-Am, which is a huge accomplishment. What do you think made the biggest difference in your game?
I think I know my game way better than I used to, even back when I was in college. I think I have a really good understanding of what's my strengths and weaknesses. I know I'm a pretty good ball striker. I had a lot of greens in regulation. I've picked up a little bit of distance since college, which has also been nice just through training and gaining some speed. And I feel like, just knowing what the strengths and weaknesses are of my game and then how to manage around the weaknesses, that's been the biggest thing. So probably practicing with feedback has helped me to figure out what is the strength and what is the weakness.
Do you feel like there's any part of your game now that's stronger or performed really well in the qualifier?
I feel like wedges has been the biggest, like distance wedges, say like 40 to 110. I think that in college that always used to be sort of up and down. I had some good rounds, some bad rounds, and I feel like I've gotten way more consistent with that. And in the qualifier, it was a course up in Pennsylvania that was tiny greens, turtleback greens, and they were firm and pretty fast. So even though it wasn't super long, it was not easy to hit the greens, and I felt like my wedge control, especially with wedges, was the biggest reasons why I ended up hitting, I think, 15 greens in regulation and wasn't really in danger of making bogeys all that much.
What are some specific tools on TrackMan that you like using, and how has this changed the way that you practice?
So I mentioned the wedges being probably the most important or most improved part of my golf game, and for that I use Test Center a lot. Test Center is this interface which looks kind of like the shot analysis, like the sort of driving range mode of TrackMan. But the fun thing is it tests you on your accuracy. So you can use either some pre-made tests or you can make your own. I made my own test for wedges, and it's basically shots between 50 and 90 yards, where TrackMan gives you a random distance within that interval, and then you're trying to hit it right on that number as straight as you can. So like right here at 54 yards, the closer I hit it to 54 yards carry and straight, the more points I'm gonna get. And that way I can track my performance, but also it adds a little bit of pressure to my practice as well.
What are the main numbers you look at on TrackMan that tell you or give you confidence that you're hitting the ball well?
So with wedges here, for example, but also with my irons, I also always look at the tack angle and club path. I like to see a little draw with my wedges and irons, so I like to see my path being probably 2 to 3 degrees out to the right, positive club path. And then attack angle, especially with the wedges, probably anywhere between -4 and -7. I have a tendency to get too shallow with the attack angle, and then sometimes, especially when I play a lot outside, the path starts to get a little too far out to the right. So even doing something like Test Center here, where it's a performance-based thing, I always pull up those two numbers just to make sure that my swing is where I want it to be. And then the third thing I always look at is centerness of contact, so that's why in the top right corner I have that impact location pulled up, so that every shot that I hit, I know not only how far it goes, does it go left or right, but also where am I hitting it on the club face, and is it consistent contact.
Why do you think someone can actually improve indoors without hitting off of grass?
So I think when you know which numbers to look at, for example the attack angle, then even though this is not exactly the same like hitting off the grass, you will know whether or not your swing is in the right spot to hit it out of the grass. So we see, I think, sometimes people come in here and they feel like it's easier to hit off the mat, but then when you pull up their attack angle with the irons, maybe it's positive. So if you know to look at those numbers, you know like, okay, off the mat it feels like an okay shot, but it's probably not gonna play because your low point is behind the ball. So if you just know which numbers to check and how the numbers should look in order to give you good impact conditions with each club, then you can get a really good practice and you can put your swing into the place where you need it to be, even hitting off the mat.
And how often have you practiced outside in the past 3 years?
I don't practice outside. I will play outside. I don't think playing on the sim replaces playing outside at all. I think there's a lot of factors of playing outside that are very unique, whether that's different lies, different grasses, rough that's different, a lot of things. So I will play outside on the course. I try to get out maybe once a week if I have the time, but I don't practice at all. I feel like it's a little bit of a waste of time. I feel like in 20 minutes of practicing with the TrackMan, I can get way more done than in 40, 50 minutes on the range. So if I do have time to go outside, I'll go out and play some holes. I won't practice.
And for comparison's sake, right now compared to, say, your senior year in college, what's your competitive scoring average, and how many hours per week do you feel like you've dedicated to the game?
Right, so in tournaments, my senior year of college, which was my best year of playing in college, I was right around 72.6 scoring average per 18 holes. Right now, this year, I'm 72.7. So very close, very close. I would also argue that I'm playing some more difficult courses here on the East Coast, but that's maybe for a different time. The amount of time that I used to spend, I mentioned in college, it was probably 20 to 30 hours of practicing a week and then 36 to 54 holes. I think this year I'm averaging probably 2 to 3 hours per week practicing and like maybe 18 holes, just under around a week. So that's, if my math is correct, like 10 times less time spent practicing and maybe 3 times fewer holes played. And I feel like just through practicing more efficiently, I have kept up my level of play, even though I spend way less time on my game.
So you've mentioned how the data in the test center has been really valuable to your practice. As an experienced golfer, or really any golfer, do you feel like the simulator can provide any value?
100%, it can. I think, again, it doesn't replace playing outside on the course, but I think it brings aspects to practicing indoors that are then way easier to transfer to playing outside. For me, probably the biggest thing when I play holes for score is just making sure that I go through my full routine. I choose my target correctly, choose the right club, take a practice swing, go through the full routine with my alignment and everything, and then hit. So I feel like when I go through that full process, full routine in here, it makes it much easier to apply that outside. And then the other thing I think is just decision making. So making sure I can be choosing the right targets, I can be hitting the right clubs with the right tees, taking hazards out of play. Those are things that you can pretty easily practice here. And then the fun thing for the Mid-Am specifically, which the championship is played in Arizona in Scottsdale at like a 2,400 feet elevation in 95-degree desert heat, so the ball's going to be going further. It's about like 6 to 8% further with all of those factors. And the cool thing here is I can just pull up a course from Scottsdale, and then TrackMan takes all of those factors into account. So the ball will go further if you pull up a course in Scottsdale compared to like a course in Maryland. So the last 2 weeks I've just been playing this golf course in Scottsdale and just been getting used to my clubs going 6 to 8% further, and getting used to like pulling a 7-iron from 204 on a par 3, which would never make it to the green in Maryland, but here between elevation and maybe a little bit of a downhill, I know I need to take a different club. So all of those factors that are in play outside, you can still simulate them here and make sure that your decision making is on point.
How do you utilize PuttView in your practice, and what has it done for your putting?
The biggest thing I do is help me set up speed control drills. I feel like speed control in putting has been historically my biggest weakness in putting, and lately the thing that's made my putting from a big weakness into like relatively okay part of my game, which is much better than it used to be. So instead of having to set up, markers or tees or whatever, what I usually do is just pull up a challenge zone or like a putt pong if I have somebody else to practice with. And then you have a game where speed control is the name of the game, but it's actually a really fun, interactive scenario that puts a little bit of pressure into the practice, but it also just makes it a little bit more entertaining. So again, if I have 10 minutes between clients or something like that, I'll probably pull up challenge zone, work on that for for a few minutes and then feel like my speed control is a little bit sharper for the rest of the week.
Was there a specific moment this season when you realized that the work indoors was paying off outdoors?
I think the first time I realized that was actually last year in my first tournament, really back since college. I played the Maryland AM qualifier, and kind of going back to the topic of wedges being better, I started a qualifier by hitting my first 4 wedges within 6 feet, all of them from like 40 to 70 yards. So the first 6 holes, I gave myself 4 really good birdie opportunities and made I think 2 or 3 of them. And the guys playing with me were like, "Man, where the hell do you practice wedges?" And I was like, "Indoors." And they were like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, indoors." Because every wedge shot that I hit, I know exactly how far it goes. So it has helped me to develop a good feel for it. And now I'm here and I know it's 67 meters or yards if you're American. And I know exactly what that swing feels like. And yeah, I'm used to hitting that inside on the mat, but I have the feedback of what swing I need to make. I make it outdoors and then that performance transfers. So that was a pretty fun moment there.
So a lot of golfers believe that they need endless range time to actually improve. What would you say to them?
I know that's not the case. I think efficient practice beats long, inefficient practice. And I feel like when you practice with feedback and you work on the right things, even a 20-30 minute practice session can make a massive difference for your game. So I wouldn't try to think in the terms of how can I find more time to dedicate to my game. I would think more in the terms of how can I make the time I'm dedicating to my game already, how can that be more efficient?
And what advice would you give to someone who wants to lower their scores? Maybe they feel a little stuck with where they're at and they don't really know where to start.
Get a lesson. That's advice I would give to myself as well. And Coach Paul here will know sometimes I'm struggling with a swing and I'll ask him to take a look and give me advice. I think this game is really hard to figure out with a coach. It's almost impossible to figure out on your own. So getting a lesson with a qualified coach that helps you figure out what's the next steps for your game is super valuable. And then if they can give you pointers, maybe 1 or 2 numbers that you need to work on going forward, you don't actually have to have a lesson every week, but it just gives you a direction that then you can work on.
And how has edge golf performance impacted your game and confidence as a player?
And it's been pretty life-changing. It's been life-changing from the sense of I'm very lucky to be able to use the resources that we have here to practice. When I have 20-30 minutes between on clients, I can jump on a TrackMan and get a wedge test center done in 10 minutes. And I feel like those 10 minutes are then going to help me for the next week on the golf course. It's just given me the opportunity to, again, maximize the time that I have to give for my golf game and just play a really good game without being able to put the same amount of time into the game that I used to when I was a competitive junior or in college.